It's been almost a year since the full-scale Russian invasion, and few people believed Ukraine would last this long. The bravery of the people has impressed everyone, even the enemy, although they don't like to admit that. However, and whether you like it or not, it's the truth, the success of Ukraine would not have been possible without military and humanitarian aid sent by Kiev's international partners. The USA has been by far the most generous donor, with its support amounting to an estimated $30 billion since the beginning of Joe Biden's administration. Now, on the 19th of January, a new military aid package of around $2.5 billion was announced by the Department of Defense, and another again on the 3rd of February. It altogether sums up to over $4.5 billion and includes a large amount of much-needed ammunition, but also quite a bit of new equipment that, without a doubt, will drastically improve Ukraine's warfaring capabilities. The USA is sending, number one, a lot of shells, 11,800 for 120mm systems, 95,000 for 105mm, and more than 20,000 155mm artillery rounds. Why is this so important? For example, since the start of the war, many different kinds of 155mm systems are now being employed. Towed ones, like the M777, wheeled, like the French Caesar, and running on tracks, like the German Panzerhaubitze 2000. Just in January, Estonia announced it will give all, yes, you heard correctly, all of its 155mm howitzers to Ukraine. So, you don't have to be an expert to figure out that a lot of guns need a lot of ammunition. Item number 2, the Stryker. It's an infantry carrier vehicle with a 4-wheel as well as an 8-wheel drive setting. So although it doesn't run on tracks, it's very good for rough terrain, which is what it will be almost definitely facing if deployed on the current front line. The wheels are supposed to withstand quite a bit of damage, and it works well as a support element for main battle tanks, protecting against imminent threats in close proximity. There is still some unclarity concerning the Stryker, however. The American DoD wants to send 90, but never specified which of the many variants of this vehicle they will send. So, we don't know which weapon systems exactly the Strykers in Ukraine will have, and there's a big difference. Some are more lightly equipped, designed to transport troops, and other variants have more advanced independent fighting capabilities. The USA is also sending their infantry fighting vehicle, the M2 Bradley, as a part of this package. If you're interested, you can check out our video about that. There's a link down in the description. Number 3, air defense, including 2 Hawk air defense firing units, additional ammunition for the National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems, NASAMS, 8 Avenger air defense systems, but also generators, radars, and other equipment designed to integrate these Western systems into Ukrainians' own air defense. Be sure to check out our report on the Ukrainian self-made air defense against drones by clicking down in the description. Number 4. Although the Department of Defense did not specify this in their press release, Pentagon spokesperson Pat Ryder said the new package includes the ground-launched small-diameter bomb. It can be launched via a HIMARS system and has a reach of up to 150 kilometers, which could be crucial to destroying Russian supply lines long before their stuff ever reaches the battlefield. But the delivery of these missiles will take time, and the world-famous launch system HIMARS will have to undergo some technical adaptations to launch these. Be aware, it's not the highest range missile the HIMARS can fire, but it's an upgrade to everything Ukraine has now, which has a reach of only around 80. Russia is pretty pissed about this one, but where would Ukraine be if they bowed down to every threat that came from Putin and his friends? And number 5, which is not even an explicit part of these 2 packages, but will be sent in addition, is the M1 Abrams main battle tank, similar in many ways to the German Leopard 2. Our video about that can be found down in the description. There are many variants of the Abrams. Ukraine is supposedly receiving 31, which in the Ukrainian army is the size of a tank battalion of type M1A2. The Abrams has seen a lot of combat action. Famous moments were, for example, the so-called Thunder Run into the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. A problem could be its engine. Don't get me wrong, the Abrams has a fascinating and highly advanced engine. The AGT 1500 is a gas turbine engine produced by the aerospace company Honeywell. But hardly anyone knows what exactly that means, and that's fine, because it is pretty complicated. You can think of it as a kind of modified helicopter engine, which can run on different kinds of fuel, on petrol, on diesel, or on kerosene. That does have its perks, but on the downside, this type of engine is harder to understand. It's harder to repair, and it's also harder to get the proper spare parts. Other tanks, like the Leopard, have a much more standard type engine, which a common mechanic in Ukraine will be able to dig into much easier. In addition to these items, the US will be sending a lot of smaller things. If you're interested in what exactly is heading towards Ukraine, you can just go on the website of the Department of Defense. But what is this telling us? Looking at these 8 packages, they seem very well-rounded. especially counting in what Ukraine already possesses. They give Kyiv improved offensive ground fighting capabilities, both for basic infantry and supporting elements like artillery and different heavy machinery. Also, they will strengthen the Ukrainian air defense, not only protecting the weaponry, but also the civilian infrastructure. Sadly, this is more necessary than ever, since Russia decided, after their considerable losses on the battlefield, to try and demoralize the population by terrorizing them with missile attacks meant to cause havoc by targeting basic needs like water and electricity. A big problem, however, the biggest problem is time. The Abrams will most likely only reach Ukraine towards the end of this year, if not in 2024. Also, the delivery of the longer-range ammunition for the HIMARS will supposedly take up to 9 months, and that's without possible setbacks. To be fair, putting this amount of equipment together, shipping it, training personnel in its mechanical use, in its tactical implementation, all the incredible amount of paperwork, it all takes time. But this is just the beginning. Things like ammunition have to be constantly supplied, especially before they run out. Supply chains are meant to work continuously. People in logistics will tell you it's the rhythm that keeps everything going. Equipment, a tank, an IFV or an artillery gun, it doesn't matter. It needs to be maintained and repaired. This requires spare parts. And those you most probably won't find in a random car repair shop, like when we talk about the engine of the Abrams. This stuff needs to be shipped, and in the best case, it needs to arrive before the equipment breaks, so it can be put back on the battlefield as fast as possible. And while, for example, 12 countries in Europe use the Leopard 2, those supply chains already exist and they just need to be adjusted, it's much more difficult with a lot of US equipment since it comes from so much more further away. The Russians know this, of course. For one, they have their own logistics problems, and two, they read the news. So, obviously, they are also racing to prepare a new offensive before Ukraine receives its new equipment. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, the Ukrainian armed forces and many others have stated publicly that Russia has actually already begun their big spring offensive, hoping to capture at least the Donbas and Lugansk regions in the next months. At the rate their men are dying compared to the small successes they are achieving, that probably won't happen. Russia is experiencing some of its heaviest losses since the beginning of their invasion. But don't be fooled. Also, Ukraine is paying a heavy price. Kyiv can only hope, or keep emphasizing the urgency, that all military aid must be delivered ASAP, since the speedy delivery can mean the difference between life and death for many, many people. Thanks for watching, and be sure to check out our next episode, which will be all about drone warfare in Ukraine.